Welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're looking at Mercury Rising from 1998.
Oh, yeah, real sleeper hit.
That's putting it lightly. Honestly, when this one came across my desk, I thought, deep dive? Really? But then I dug into the material you sent.
Yeah.
Let's just say there's more to this movie than meets the eye.
What I love is this isn't just someone gushing about how good it is. Your source really gets into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. Like their take on Bruce Willis. Totally unexpected. We're so used to him in, those big action hero roles.
Yippee-ki-yay and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
But here, the source calls out his performance as being a million miles away from the lethargy of some of his later stuff.
Which is a bold statement to make, let's be honest. We're talking 98 here, peak Bruce Willis, die-hard Pulp Fiction, the guy was on fire.
Exactly. So to say this role was different, that's fascinating to me.
It really makes you wonder, was this a deliberate choice on Willis's part? Was he trying to break out of that action hero mold? Or was it a sign of the times in Hollywood, a shift in how those kinds of characters were being written?
Maybe a bit of both. The source really honed in on the whole contained emotion thing with Willis's performance.
Yeah. Like that scene, man, when Simon's threatened and Jeffries just looks at him. No big speeches, just this quiet intensity.
That look spoke volumes, though, didn't it? You could feel the weight of the situation on it.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so effective. This isn't John McClane cracking wise while dodging bullets. This is Art Jeffries, a guy wrestling with his past, terrified of failing this kid.
See, that's what I mean about digging deeper. Most people wouldn't think twice about that scene. But when you break it down like that, it adds a whole other layer to the performance.
It's those little choices that an actor makes, those subtle nuances, that can completely change how we experience a film.
Totally. By choosing restraint, Willis draws us in, makes us feel that tension right alongside him.
It's a masterclass in understated acting. And it makes you wonder, right? How would this film have played out with a more, shall we say, expressive performance?
Would we have been as invested in Jeffries if he was cracking jokes the whole time? I don't think so.
It really highlights how much our perception of a character is shaped by the actor's choices. And speaking of impactful performances, this source doesn't let Alec Baldwin off the hook either.
Oh, no. What do they have to say about his performance as Kudrow?
They call it effective, but not his most memorable villain.
Interesting. And it's true. We've seen Baldwin just chew the scenery as a villain.
Right.
So what makes this one different?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying about Willis, the subtlety.
You think Kudrow's a subtle villain?
In a way, yeah. Think about it. His motivations are different. When he talks about that $2 billion code, chills, right?
Ugh, yeah. Definitely not a line you want to hear from a government agent.
Exactly. It's not about greed. It's not about revenge. It's something far more unsettling.
It's like he doesn't even see Simon as a person, just a problem that needs to be dealt with.
That's it. It's bureaucratic evil at its finest.
And Baldwin plays that coldness to perfection, doesn't he? The source pointed out how he walks that line between, like, everyday bureaucrat and someone genuinely menacing.
Oh, totally. It's all in the detail.
Like what? Give me some specific. I want to watch for him next time.
Okay, so that ramrod posture, always so stiff and proper, right?
Yeah. And that way he talks like each word is a carefully measured dose of ice.
Exactly. There's no warmth there, no empathy, just this complete disregard for Simon as a human being.
Which, let's be real, is way more disturbing than some over-the-top villain.
100%. He embodies that impersonal, uncaring system, and it's chilling.
Chilling is right. So we've got Willis breaking our hearts with his quiet intensity, Baldwin sending shivers down our spines with his bureaucratic menace,
Yeah.
and then there's Simon.
Yeah. And this is where the conversation gets a little more delicate, I guess.
For sure. The portrayal of Simon and his autism has definitely sparked some debate, and the source acknowledges that.
Which is understandable. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right. Some people argue that we need more authentic representation, more neurodiverse actors playing neurodiverse roles.
And that's a valid point, for sure.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side of the coin, the argument that films like Mercury Rising, even with their flaws, can help to raise awareness.
Which is also true. It's about starting a conversation, right?
Exactly. And the source goes on to talk about Miko Hughes' performance, pointing out his repetitive movements, the way he relies on those note cards. And it makes you wonder, is this leaning into stereotypes? Or is it offering a glimpse into a different way of experiencing the world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we're still grappling with today. How do we represent neurodiversity in media responsibly and authentically? It's an ongoing conversation.
It really makes you think about how far we've come and how much further we still have to go.
Absolutely. And, speaking of things that make you think, there's another aspect of Mercury Rising that I found really interesting.
Oh, lay it on me.
Well, for a Bruce Willis action thriller, it's surprisingly restrained.
You're not wrong. There weren't as many explosions as I was expecting.
Right. The source actually uses the phrase contained but effective to describe the action sequences.
Huh. That's one way to put it.
I think it's a deliberate choice, though, and it goes back to that whole idea of subtlety we were talking about earlier.
I see what you mean.
Like, if we compare Mercury Rising to something like Armageddon, which also came out in 98.
Talk about explosions.
Right, but Mercury Rising, even with those high stakes, it keeps things more grounded, more intimate.
It's true. The action scenes are definitely more about tension than spectacle.
Exactly. And that's why that train sequence is so effective.
Oh, man, when they're trapped in that train car with the bad guys closing in.
My heart was racing. And it's not even a huge, over-the-top action set piece.
Right. It's the claustrophobia, the sense of urgency, the fact that Jeffries is fighting to protect Simon, not save the world.
Exactly. The stakes are personal, and that makes all the difference.
Though the source did mention that the action could have been a little more, I don't know, drawn out.
Yeah, they felt like some opportunities for bigger set pieces were missed.
What do you think? Would a little more Michael Bay have helped or hurt the film?
It's a tough call.
Right. Too much action, and you lose the emotional core.
But too little, and you risk boring the audience.
It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And whether Mercury Rising strikes that balance perfectly is, I guess, up to the individual viewer.
That's what's so great about these deep dives, though, right?
What's that?
We get to unpack all these different aspects of a film, from the performances to the action sequences to the bigger social issues at play.
And let's not forget those villainous motivations.
Right. It's amazing how one movie can spark so many conversations.
Speaking of which, the source made a really interesting point about Mercury Rising being ripe for reevaluation.
Oh, yeah. In what way?
They argued that the film's themes, particularly around neurodiversity and government overreach, might resonate even more strongly with audiences today.
I could see that.
We're definitely more aware of those issues now than we were back in 98.
It's true, and it makes you wonder if Mercury Rising was ahead of its time in some ways.
Or maybe it just tapped into some timeless anxieties that continue to resonate with us.
Either way, it's a film that stays with you.
Absolutely. And I think it's safe to say that Mercury Rising is more than just your typical action thriller.
Way more. It's a film that makes you think, makes you feel, and maybe even makes you see the world a little differently.
Well said.
And that's what we're all about here on The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us for this exploration of Mercury Rising. And remember, sometimes the most unassuming films can hold the deepest secrets. Until next time, keep those deep dives going.